version of natural law. And in that case, it is not a church, it is not our conscience, it is a vote by the General Assembly of the UN that has come up with the list of human rights that you need to read. And so what the UN is saying is, these rights, these moral rights apply to everyone in the world. And if your government denies that, or if your culture says it's otherwise, then your government, your culture, whoever is denying this, are wrong. And we are right. This applies to everyone universally. That's the same as natural law, but in the context of politics with the UN, okay? So natural law is a universe. The idea is that morality is universal and objective. What is right, and what is wrong, regardless of how you feel about it, okay? So it's natural law. Now you may say, well, okay, if that is so, if we all have this knowledge that for what is right and what is wrong, how come we disagree? How come he thinks abortion is right and I think it's wrong? How come he thinks pornography is right and I think it's wrong? How come, well, there are different explanations for that. The quintessentially Christian explanation is original sin. Original sin. Original sin weakened our natures, our minds, gave us an inclination to sin. And so we see things through this self-interested prism. We are never fully objective. Have you seen those Judge Judy type shows in which you have two parties arguing on TV about something? And some of the times, it's hard to tell who's right and who's wrong, but some of the times, just see one of the guys, he's trying to get away with murder. Like, obviously, he's totally wrong. How does he have the guts to go on TV and try to make his point? And he seems so convinced that he's right. Okay? Well, that happens to each of us all the time. When something is in our interest, we'll twist it, we'll persuade ourselves that, after all, we need to do this. We'll do anything it takes. And then we have blurred our moral vision. So in that case, who's to say what's right and what's wrong? I mean, it may be very well that we are born with that knowledge, but then since we disagree because we are so self-interested and so, who's going to decide? Well, the church or religious authority. In the old times, the Pope, religious authority in any religion will say, this is what is right, this is what is wrong. And if you disagree, you are wrong. So that's how natural law works. Okay? So morality, again, summarizing it, is objective and universal. It doesn't vary from place to place or from time to time. And we disagree because of original sin from the Christian interpretation of it, and it's religious authority that decides what's right and what's wrong. Okay? We also talked about the UN. And remember, the UN is offering a different version of natural law, which is a secularized version. Okay, it's not a religious version, so don't mistake the one with the other. Now, let's go now to the point that morality does not vary from place to place or from time to time. You need to remember this for your tests, okay? Because this is the kind of evidence that you need to explain. As I said, natural law says morality is the same in the past and today, and it will be the same in the future. Whether we recognize it or not, in other words, something may be right, we may be saying it's not, or maybe wrong, we may be saying it's right today. It may take centuries until we come to a conclusion that that was wrong. Okay, it doesn't mean we were right, we were wrong in saying that certain thing which is wrong, insisting that it is right, okay? So it doesn't change the moral nature of the fact that it's wrong, regardless of what we say. Now, the law varies from place to place, correct? Morality, we said, doesn't vary. It cannot vary neither from place to place or from time to time. Now, we have a law in California that allows the death penalty, but there is no death penalty in Hawaii, for example, or in Michigan. Well, let me tell you. From the perspective of natural law, if the moral thing to do is to execute certain criminals, then California is being moral on that count. has a moral law on that count, and Hawaii has an immoral law on that count. But if executing anyone is morally wrong, then California has an immoral law, and Hawaii is more moral than California on that count. And you could say the same for every single law, no matter how important or how unimportant it may seem to you. We may not worry so much about other little laws as about the death penalty or abortion or stuff, but for every law, there is a right and a wrong. And since the laws vary from Nevada, where there is legal prostitution and this and that, to California, that we have legal use of marijuana in certain cases, to another state that doesn't, well, which is the moral one? They can't all be moral. And then if you go from the US to Canada, Germany, Australia, from different countries, different laws, well, either one of them is the absolutely moral system, and that's dubious, or none of them are fully moral. So what we find is a kind of a low-level immorality in the law. And that's pretty obvious. For example, think of the last time you got a parking ticket. How do you feel? Not good, huh? Okay, well, say you have two guys here that get a parking ticket. We have Jad, and we have Hermine. Okay? And so it turns out that Jad is the rich kid. He has so much money, he couldn't care less about money. So he sees his parking, his $80 parking ticket, and he just goes, oh, well, Daddy will take care of this. He doesn't care. He just goes partying. And then Hermine, she works at McDonald's 12 hours a day. She makes $2 an hour. And when she sees her $80 parking ticket, she knows what that means, a whole week without dinner. And she's just about to collapse. She's having a heart attack, and well, both people are getting the same penalty for the same violation. But is that penalty inflicting the same amount of suffering on the one and the other? Obviously not. She's suffering objectively more than he is. Well, the law is unfair, unjust on that simple count, okay? But say we had a proportional ticket law, as they do in some countries in Europe. And so these two guys get their ticket, but before they assign the amount they have to pay, they're going to look into their tax records, and they're going to say, well, this guy's going to pay, his ticket is going to be $800, and her ticket is going to be $18 only. But you know what? Jazz is the kind of guy who doesn't care about anything. He just sees the $800, oh, well, Daddy won't be that happy this time. Oh, well, what the hell? Let's go party. Couldn't care less. But Hermine, she sees the $18 ticket, and she's one of these perfectionists. She just can't deal with it, because you couldn't see the sign. It was hidden behind those branches, and they put the signs in there on purpose, and you don't see them, and you're not going to pay, I'm not going to pay it, I'm not going to pay it. And she's having a heart attack. Can the law do anything about that? There's nothing the law can do about that, because it's just a personality type. So the law is bound to be immoral at some level, no matter what. Okay? Now think of what being a moral person means versus being a good citizen. Let me make this point first. The law may be immoral to some degree. That doesn't mean we have to disobey the law permanently. No. In fact, we do have an overarching obligation to obey the law, even if it is somewhat immoral, in the sense that we can't really overcome a certain degree of immorality, for the sake of social order, for the sake of social order. Now, when the opposition, the conflict between morality and the law becomes too acute, and we're going to see that later in the second part of the class when we talk about the law, then that's a different story. But for the smaller things like that, you don't want to spend your life fighting the parking violations bureau. It's not worth it. Just pay the $80 and forget about it, because otherwise, some people will. Thank goodness. So that's why things end up changing. But for the most part, we're not going to have a civil war because of a parking violation. So we just let it go, okay? Now, what does being a good citizen mean versus being a good person?